Hi, I'm Dr. Krista Nicholson, and I work at Murdoch University. I have been studying dolphins in Mandurah since 2016. The Mandurah Dolphin Research Project was established together with City of Mandurah, the Peel Development Commission, Mandurah Cruises, the Mandurah Volunteer Dolphin Rescue Group, and John and Bella Perry. We commenced the project in 2016 and did a very specific population assessment study in 2016 and 2017. Since then, we have monitored the population actively. Out of all the effort that we've done looking for the dolphins, we encountered more than 1,300 dolphin groups. And out of these groups, we identified more than 500 different individuals. So we found that in Mandurah, in the Peel-Harvey Estuary, we have a community of dolphins that is discrete from the coastal communities. So they're socially distinct. The animals in the estuary associate at a much higher rate with one another than with animals that use the coastal waters. In the coast, we have 4 different social communities that are spatially distinct. So you can see in the middle panel that some animals spend more time in the northern parts of our study area, some more in Dawesville Cut, some on the southern parts of our study area, and then the community that we have in the Peel-Harvey Estuary. We also looked at the carbon and nitrogen that are accumulated in the dolphin skin, and usually animals that spend a lot of time in estuaries have much higher concentrations of carbon in their organs or in their skin or muscles. So we looked at that and found that dolphins that spend time in the estuary actually have a lot higher carbon concentrations than those that are on the coast. So isotopically, that makes them also distinct from coastal animals and shows us that these dolphins or this dolphin community is dependent on estuarine resources. So they feed in the estuary. So we also found that dolphins in the estuary are apex predators. This means that they feed at the top of the food chain and lack really predators that are feeding on them. So as top predators or apex predators, they suppress prey populations by consuming a lot of fish mainly, but also changing their prey behavior. While the prey is trying to avoid to be eaten, they might distribute differently around the estuary as they otherwise would. So I estimated that the community of dolphins feed on more than 200,000 kilograms of fish every year. And that makes them a significant predator in the estuary. So I also found that individuals that are part of the community use the estuary very differently. So some animals spend a lot of time in the Mandurah Channel, and they have a very similar diet to each other. Some animals prefer areas in the Peel Inlet or in the Harvey Estuary, so the estuary basins, and they have similar diet to each other. And then we have other animals that prefer the eastern shores of the estuary and travel up the rivers, and again, they have a different diet than the other dolphins in the estuary, and that's mainly sea mullet. So based on the dolphins occupying the estuary year-round, so they're long-term resident animals, and then being dependent on the estuarine resources, mainly the fish, and the community being distinct from coastal communities or coastal dolphins, we can say that these dolphins in the estuary are part of the ecological character of the Ramsar-listed wetland system, the Peel-Yalgarat system, that the Peel-Harvey Estuary is a part of. And that brings them to the international arena of being significant. So now if we look at specifically the dolphin community that resides in the estuary, there's approximately 90 individuals in the community of all different ages. We've observed no immigration to the estuary community, so that means that the population only grows by animals being born into the community. We suspect that some of the juvenile males leave the estuary when they reach sexual maturity, and that's some animals that are actually leaving the community, making the community smaller. But still, we have quite good survival rates of animals in the estuary. They're very comparable to other populations with high survival of adult individuals, a little bit lower of the juveniles, and newborn calves usually have the lowest survival out of all the age classes. Quite interestingly, though, in Mandurah, those animals that survive their first year of life tend to make it to being independent. We also have a very good reproductive rate in this community. So we call it that the community is has reached its reproductive capacity. So every female who's available to have a calf actually is having a calf. Despite all these kind of good numbers or good demographic parameters, we still estimated or forecast that the population is in slight decline currently over time. So you can see on this slide that the current trajectory is going down a little bit. There is a very low probability of the community going extinct in the next 100 years, but it's still slightly concerning. Now, what we want to do especially is to try and make sure that we decrease the mortality of adult females who are reproducing new individuals into the community. And if we can do so by reducing adult mortality by 10%, we actually ensure that this community stays at about 90 individuals over time. So how do the dolphins actually lose their life in the estuary? So we obviously have natural mortality. Dolphins die of old age. But the estuary is also identified as a live stranding hotspot. So since the 90s, we've recorded these live strandings, at least 60 of them between 1990 and when we started our study in 2016. And since we started our study, we've had 36 strandings, of which 26 strandings were live animals. And we've had to go and help at least 10 of them because they were stuck high and dry on land. So who are these animals that strand in the estuary? They're generally healthy individuals that belong to the resident community. We've only observed one individual in the last 6 years who was a coastal dolphin stranding in the estuary. We know that once they've been refloated after having been stranded, they thrive at least or up to 29 years. We know that the animals still reproduce successfully since they've been stranded. So they're healthy individuals. And in this community of dolphins, at least about 30% of the individuals have stranded at least once, some of them on multiple occasions. And about 13% of the population, they show sunburn scarring, which is this really white, distinct scarring on their bodies. And we can attribute about 20% of all the deaths in this community to animals that have unfortunately live stranded and haven't been able to be removed to deeper waters. So a typical stranding is an animal that strands where it generally spends its time. So this is Kristen, a juvenile dolphin in the estuary. And you can see from the map here that he spends most of his time in the Harvey Estuary, and he's stranded where you see that star. So in a place where he's familiar with. We have two different types of strandings, confinement strandings and high and dry strandings. And confinement strandings happen quite regularly, and this means that the animals are stranded in a pool of water, but they can't leave that area, but they can still swim. And you can see here, this is at the very bottom of the Harvey Estuary, where, for example, 2 males were stranded for 3 days until they got out of that pool. And then high and dry strandings, self-explanatory. The animal is stuck on land, can't move. And that's where we really need to help them and move them into deeper water. And as I mentioned, we have a few repeat offenders. For example, this adult male, who unfortunately now has passed away, he stranded at least 3 times that we know of, and most likely more. And here you can see the awful sunburn. So when the animals are stranded, especially when they're high and dry stranded, in the hot summer months, they can get really badly sunburned. So even with quite bad sunburn, it heals very well, as you can see from these images. But if we don't help them to get to deeper water soon enough, they can actually lose life because they're getting so badly burnt. Here you can see some of the healing process. So at the start of 2019, this is a juvenile animal, and it was quite badly sunburnt during stranding, and we didn't find it when he was actually stranded. So he got out himself after the tide came up. And you can see over the course of the year, it heals quite quickly. And at the end of the day, when it's all healed, you can just see that very distinct white scarring. So always be out on the look for that when you look at the Mandurah dolphins. So other unfortunate events that we've seen in the estuary are entanglements in recreational fishing line. So currently we have this adult female dolphin, River, who's entangled in her pectoral fin. We've had other ones that have been entangled more severely. So when the entanglement goes through the mouth, the animal actually can't eat anymore, and we have to act really quickly to release them. So this animal that you can see is a calf called Halo, who was actually cut free from the line and then thrived after that and didn't seem to have any long-lasting effects from the entanglement. Here we have another one who was in Dawesville Cut and badly around its body entangled in fishing line. And after a while, it was entangled in the notches that were created initially with the entanglement, and that just gathered more line and seaweed, and it started to become really heavy. So unfortunately, this individual, who you might have heard of, called Luca, he actually passed away due to the entanglement or the injuries sustained by the entanglement. So how can we help the animals? Obviously, we want to responsibly dispose of all our fishing line and our rubbish, so that doesn't affect any of the wildlife in Mandurah. But in this particular community of dolphins, we want to try and reduce female mortality. We want to ensure that no animals die because of entanglements. And we want to reduce the mortality from those live strandings. So we really want to keep an eye out as dolphin watchers of animals that are in distress or high and dry stranded to prevent them from being sunburnt if they're not moved to deeper water. And we want to continue monitoring the population to ensure that that slightly negative population growth rate that I talked about, that we make sure that that comes up and we have a stable population over time. So, as a dolphin watcher, you should get your hands on the fin book Mandurah. This will have a catalog of images of all the dolphins, or not all the dolphins, but a section of the dolphins that use the Peel-Harvey Estuary. We have information on all the different individuals, like if they have stranded, if they're male, female, who they actually like to spend time with within the estuary. The Fin Guide also has a behavioral guide and a lot of dolphin stories of the local dolphins, such as Halo that I talked about before, who was entangled. And we tend to produce new stories for each different edition of the Fin book. So just quickly, when you look at the fin book and you see all the different individuals, they're actually identifiable by natural markings in their dorsal fin or elsewhere in their body, like the sunburn scarring. But dolphins just naturally, throughout their time when they're interacting with each other, they develop these little nicks and notches on their dorsal fin, and they're all unique to each of the individuals. Now, in Mandurah specifically, the sunburn scarring is one thing, but we still have a few animals that have numbers on their fin. And they were freeze branded in the 90s when they live stranded in Lake Gograp up the Serpentine River. So keep an eye out for those ones because they're easy to identify from the numbers. So what can you do? First of all, become a Dolphin Watch patron and record all the dolphin sightings via the app. The That will provide us very important information of where the dolphins are spending their time in. So we also want to keep the Peel-Harvey Estuary clean and free from discarded fishing line. So dispose of your fishing line responsibly. We also want you to slow down for dolphins. If you see them while you're out about doing your business in the estuary, just slow down, let them approach you, don't approach them. And please never ever feed the dolphins. And most importantly, share your enthusiasm and your knowledge with all others so that they also can become Dolphin Watch patrons and look after the community of dolphins in the Peel-Harvey Estuary. Thank you very much.